Hi booktube, Aaron here, hope you're doing okay. Today I'm going to be answering some questions. So a few days ago I put out a call for questions for a Q&A to celebrate the fact that my channel has reached 700 subscribers, and I've never done this before, so it might be a bit rocky, but I've got a nice batch of questions. So yeah, thank you for everyone who left the questions, and I'm going to try and go through them as succinctly as possible, but I have a tendency to ramble, and I think I might have to split this up into parts. So I'm going to keep an eye on the time, and every 20 minutes or so I might stop the video and start again, and go on from there. So we'll see how it goes. Let's jump in with the first question. This is from Sandra Hollins. And Sandra says, hello Aaron, I'm a new subscriber and enjoy your videos. Can I ask what made you a reader? Was it just something you enjoyed, or were you encouraged by your parents or school? What stories did you first like reading? And what age were you when you branched into classics and history? So yeah, a great question just about how I became a reader. So yeah, thank you very much, Sandra. Yeah, so what made me a reader? So it wasn't necessarily something I really enjoyed from the very beginning. I was definitely encouraged to do it by my parents and at school. Definitely at home, there were loads of books around. Um, so both my parents liked reading. I suppose that the area they had in common was mainly like fantasy and stuff. My mum, yeah, she'd kind of read all sorts as well, but yeah, a lot of fantasy, I think, for my mum actually. My dad likes his crime and his espionage thrillers. He likes his science fiction, and then he also likes people like Dickens. He loves Shakespeare and Kafka. So there was quite a broad range of things just kind of around when I was growing up. And so that they definitely encouraged me to read. My dad would read us things. He would, yeah, sort of read us the Chronicles of Narnia when we were quite little. Sorry, I've got some books to show you, so I'm just trying to work out the order. Yeah, he'd read us the Chronicles of Narnia and The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and things like that. But I really only got into reading probably when I was about 8 or 10, sort of in that kind of range, between those ranges. I was kind of intrigued by reading, and the thing I really wanted to read was The Lord of the Rings. So when I was about 8, I think I was about 8, my parents got me my own copy of The Hobbit, which I read and absolutely loved, as you can see by the condition. And yeah, just really loved the Hobbit, and I just loved being in this world. And then I went on to reading Lord of the Rings as well, and really loved that. And there was something to Tolkien's style, the way he tells a story, that I really liked. I think I was interested in mythology and folklore and stuff and legends as a kid. They really aroused my curiosity. And so having someone kind of writing in that kind of tradition, it's very much a modern kind of myth. And I think that kind of oral folktale kind of tradition is very much alive in Tolkien. So I really loved that. And then there was a backlash after I finished reading Tolkien, and I just couldn't really find anything. I was still reading, but I wasn't loving it, and it wasn't something I was doing a lot of. I was still reading bits and bobs then. And then what turned that around when I was about 16 were the Mortal Engines books. And again, it was a world I could be immersed in. Uh, the style of storytelling is very different to Tolkien, but it just kind of realised that I could appreciate a range of styles and registers. And so that was kind of this was the stone that got that avalanche kind of going again. So that's kind of how I got into reading. When it comes to classics and history, obviously I had to read bits and bobs at home. My dad introduced me to, to Samuel Taylor Coleridge, to Dante once. I don't think my dad has read the whole of the Divine Comedy, but I think, like me, he's very curious, and so he had a copy. And when I was asking some questions about the Divine Comedy, he was like, "Oh well, just read it." And so so I was aware of them from a young age, from around the age of 10. Only started reading them maybe for myself around the age of 17, something like that. My sister was much more bookish as a kid, and was, definitely reading the Brontes as a teenager, whereas I wasn't really. And then history is much more recent, really. Just the last 5 years or so, I think. It's a subject I liked. I did read sort of kids' history books when I was, again around the age of 10. But kind of after that, I didn't kind of make the transition to kind of grown-up non-fiction history until relatively recently. It's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I hope that kind of answers the question. Next up from Jack. First of all, congratulations, Aaron. What are your favourite books, if you have any, that is? Favourite poetry? And then, do you write poetry yourself, or would you like to write anything? And then Jack says, it's good to see your channel growing. You really deserve it. So, thank you very much, Jack. It's always a surprise. So favourite books and favourite poets, these are questions that make my head ache, because I find it really hard to to decide, really. Sorry, I'm not speaking very well today. But I took some books down from my shelves and kind of just went with gut reactions. So many of them, with the exception of one, they're all writers that I've gotten into in the last 3, 4, 5 years, something like that. So Borges is a big one. I think I was introduced to him in like 2018, 2019, somewhere around there, I think. And I've just been obsessed with him since. And he just, I think what I love about him is just that he loves books so much, and the weird relationships between books, and just the kind of cloud of literature, I suppose. And then for something that was a recent favourite, that was just a really nice surprise, and I think it's going to be a lifelong favourite, it's going to be A Time of Gifts by Patrick Leigh Fermor. And I think it's just the energy of his storytelling and the world that he's showing us of Europe in the early 1930s, and that's very much a lost world now. So there's that youthful energy, and then there's that nostalgia as well, which is just really, really great. So I'm going to go on and read the rest of his travels, but they were really, really fun. In terms of favourite poets, again, really, really quite hard. Ted Hughes is a poet I quite like, and we'll get into my relationship with Ted Hughes a little bit later. But I got a couple of examples for poets I keep coming back to. One of them is W.S. Graham, which again, I only kind of got introduced to him in the kind of year or so leading up to COVID. And so I was reading him for the first time during the pandemic. And what I like about him is he seems to cover a lot of the kind of range of the kind of poetry I like. So he starts off writing very neo-romantic poetry. So I think he started writing poetry in like the 1930s, 1940s. So it's very neo-romantic, very much in the vein of Dylan Thomas and people like him. And they were in this kind of apocalyptic movement. So it's full of energy and really rich imagery, and there's just lots of just kind of relishing just the certain forms as well. So there's lots of really rich rhymes and just things like that. It's kind of just overflowing, and I really love that. And then it gets a little bit quieter then as he moves into a middle period. It's a bit more inquisitive. still really lyrical though, very musical. And then by the end, you're just realizing that he's still very quirky all the way through his career. By the end, though, he's being a bit more experimental, and he's poking language with a stick almost, and he's asking the language, what are you using me for? And he's just playing all these tricks and these games, and it's just really fun. So there's just such a range in W.S. Graham. He's not really my favourite poet, but he kind of represents the kind of the things that I go to poetry for. And then a poet I just find myself coming back to again and again is T.S. Eliot. So not particularly like a kind of indie pick or anything like that. But he just impresses me more and more the more I read him. And really from any period of his writing. I went through a period a couple of years ago of kind of dismissing his earlier stuff, but that's really brilliant. The Wasteland is brilliant. I absolutely love Four Quartets, and he's just a poet that really knew what he was doing, and he had really really high standards. But I think they pay off. He really worked hard to create the kind of poetry that he thought he needed to write, and I think that the times needed maybe. And it's just so controlled, and I always think that with it being modernism, it's going to be all over the place, but T.S. Eliot is really really controlled, really really musical. Again, he's so really that's just a control on the vowel sounds that you're using and where you place certain vowel sounds. So it's even if the poetry isn't necessarily rhyming, you still have this kind of undertow in the language. So yeah, I really really like T.S. Eliot, and I'm just appreciating him more and more and more. Let's move on. Oh no, wait. Jack also asked if I write poetry or anything myself, and I do write poetry. It's something that I did a lot again in the years leading up to COVID, and then I kind of just went really deep into my own little rabbit holes when it came to my writing, and then I think I kind of burnt myself out, and have kind of emerged, and I'm trying to kind of make sense of some of the things I've written. So I do write poetry, and I'm getting back into it. I've been sporadic of late, but I'm getting back into it, and I'm trying to write things that aren't poetry as well. So I'm trying to journal every day, and I want to write some short stories eventually, and I'm hoping to just work on essays and kind of blogging and things like that as well. Just because I like making sense of my thoughts, and writing is just such a great way of doing that, of sitting with them and shaping them. Yeah, it's something I want to do more and more and more of, and I'm just working up my I don't know, my kind of writing fitness, I suppose. I've gone flabby, but I'm going back to the gym, and I'm starting from square one. Then Summer from Sterling Reads says, congratulations on the 700 plus. Thank you, Summer. And Summer asks, could you tell us more about your pets? So I've got 4 pets. So I've got 2 rabbits. They're called Maddie and Leaf, and I've got 2 gerbils, and they're called Gandalf and Pippin. As you can guess, Gandalf is grey, and Pippin is kind of a gingery colour. And we got the gerbils a couple of years ago now, or about a year and a half ago, and they sit in, it's up downstairs by the dining table, and they're just really sociable. If you sit near them, they'll come up, and they're very inquisitive, and they want to know what you're doing. So they're really fun to have around. The rabbits we've had for nearly 4 years. We got them in the kind of autumn before lockdown, and yeah, they proved to be just really good friends, really good company sort of during that period, and again, that they're um, not quite as inquisitive. They like exploring new places. So they've got their own little area, their own little patio area behind the house. And then there's sort of the area where all the plants are a bit further back. So every now and then we just let them out into the back when we're out there with them, so they don't eat all the plants, just so they can explore and stuff like that. And they're because we got them when they were a couple of months old, and their previous owners, or their breeders, they called the rabbit who's now Leaf. They called him Columbus because he loved to explore, and so we called him Leaf after Leif Erikson, just because we thought that Leif Erikson is a bit cooler than Christopher Columbus. And then Maddie is named after Madoc, a Welsh, kind of legendary Welsh explorer. But Maddie turned out to be a girl. So that's my pets. So there are 4 of them. And yeah, thanks for asking, Summer. Next up, we've got MJ from Reading This Life. So MJ says, congrats. You deserve way more than 700 subs. I always enjoy your videos and how different our favourite genres are, but we can still enjoy the joys of booktube. And I absolutely agree. Thank you, MJ. I was watching a book haul from MJ the other day. It was nearly all horror, and I don't really read any horror really, but it was really, really fun. And horror books just have the coolest colours, and MJ is just a great. I don't know. She's kind of like glue. She kind of just seems to hold the whole booktube community together, and just kind of generates this enthusiasm and joy. So yeah, thanks for asking a question as well, MJ. So MJ asks, what is your favourite book that you seem to recommend over and over again to people? And MJ also asks, what is your favourite beverage to enjoy while reading? Again, kind of a favourite book kind of question is quite hard. I'm also really bad at recommending books. So a while ago, someone was we're just talking about what we've been reading recently, and the person was saying that they like Victorian classics and stuff, but some of them are really depressing. And I found myself recommending Jude the Obscure for some reason. So I just went with the most depressing one for them. But yeah, so I need to get a bit better at recommending books. I think I need to read more books to be able to recommend more books. But one book I keep kind of recommending is War and Peace. And I'm not just saying to like anyone, you have to read this book. That's definitely not the case. But I found myself having quite a few conversations with people who have maybe tried reading it before and just not finished it. And I'm not telling them, oh no, you are totally wrong, you have to finish this book. But I'm just kind of nudging them and just saying, well, if you have some time, if ever in your life you have some time and you feel like reading it again, I would say that's a good investment of your time. Maybe give it another go, because I absolutely love this book. Just one of the most involved books I've ever read. I felt like I was really living with these people for I think it took me about 6 weeks, and it was just amazing. So yeah, I just kind of share my experience and gently nudge them. A book I'd love to recommend more is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. I keep underestimating this book. I keep forgetting just how much I enjoyed it when I read it. It's got indentations in the cover here, because when I was reading it, I was just like, because it's so thrilling and so suspenseful, and it's really, really hard to summarize. So it opens with a guy called Walter having an eerie encounter on a moonlit London road, and then it just, yeah, his life is somehow inexplicably kind of linked to this encounter, and it's just really, yeah, really eerie, really suspenseful. It's kind of like Gothic fiction, but it's not nearly as over the top as like the Mysteries of Udolpho or anything. So I absolutely love The Woman in White. So that's one I wish I'd recommend more. And then MJ also asks, so what's my favourite beverage to enjoy while reading? I'm currently drinking coffee. I absolutely love coffee. I don't like instant coffee, so it has to be ground coffee. And I like it with a splash of milk, not too much. But I mainly drink tea when I'm reading, I think. Definitely in the evening, so that's black tea with, again, a dash of milk, no sugar, and it's, yeah, just great. I am one of those people who can actually cope with reading with like with alcohol, so I'm more than happy to sit down with a pint and a book. That's totally fine. Ugh, it's making me thirsty. So there we go. That's my, yeah. I think my favourite beverage to drink would be tea, and definitely in the winter, like Lapsang Souchong tea. So kind of smoky black tea. Absolutely love it. And then I think I'll do one more question before starting again. So this question's from Mika, and Mika asks, first Mika says, "Congratulations, Aaron." So yeah, thank you, Mika. And the question is, did you major English at university? And if so, are you still active academically? So yeah, I did do English at university. Good guess. So I did, yeah, an undergrad in English literature, and then I went on and did a master's in creative writing, which I very much saw as studying English, but from another perspective. Yeah, so I wouldn't sort of recommend it to everyone who wants to be a writer per se, but for me, again, it was just curiosity. That's something that keeps on coming up for me, and I just wanted to look at it from a different direction. I'm not still active academically. I stopped after my master's with a kind of vague plan to maybe do a PhD eventually. A couple of years ago, I did have a plan for a thesis, but my heart wasn't really in it, and so I kind of gave up on it. But I'm still, you know, kind of thinking about it, and eventually, if I come up with something that I think is worth pursuing, then I might go back and do a PhD. But we'll just see how it goes. But there we go. So I'll leave part one there, but I'll be back in a second for part two.